And all right. Okay. So make sure. One, two, one. Yeah. Okay, good.
Are we good?
Yeah. That's why I was like, are we muted or not? Do this whole thing, and all you see is your talking heads. That'd be terrible. That happened to me with one of them. One of my first ones. I luckily was recording on my phone as well, and we had a whole session, and then I went back to the replay, and it was silent
the whole time.
I was no. But I had recorded on my phone too, so I was able to pull the audio from the phone and just overlay it, and it ended up working out. But I was like, if I had not recorded that, oh, what a waste of time that would have been. All right, so let me give you a quick rundown of how I typically do this session. So this is really, I don't do this like a formal interview where we're just kind of talking to the camera. This is really just a conversation between you and I. And if you want to refer to the camera, you're welcome to. I want to have a conversation with you. And it's an open conversation. Typically, the topics that we usually focus around are going to be real estate, business. Sometimes we'll touch on like the economy. And sometimes we just go on a tangent and just talk about whatever. So it's a fun, open conversation.
No-free, so.
Yeah. So, I just, I enjoy having these conversations with professionals like yourself. And I didn't want there to be any kind of like format that we have to follow, right? So we're just going to have it open.
We're not.
Yeah. I know that I'm not. So I'm
not.
So, that's pretty much the way that we set it up. So, to formally introduce this, how you guys doing? My name is Gus. This is the Ortiz Anomaly podcast. I'm with KW Commercial. I also am the PC coach here in our office, and I'm here with Joanne Oswalt. You're with Florida Realty
Investments.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Awesome. And you specialize in land. Okay, so land is a really interesting animal. I've done some very small land deals, and the small ones that I've done have kind of been were way more complicated than I had anticipated. Yes. So it got me to realize that if I run into any kind of land deals, I really give you a call most of the time. I'm like, hey, Joanne, you're the person who really I didn't talk to about this because you do this now. You have a pretty broad area that you focus on, like in terms of Florida. Like you work a lot of Florida.
The location, yes. So I typically travel all the way down to Okeechobee and up to the Panhandle.
Oh my goodness!
So I try and stay off the East Coast, just because of traffic, and it's just I'm more comfortable in that.
Yeah.
Okeechobee, I do mostly agricultural land, so Okeechobee up to the Panhandle.
Gotcha.
So wherever the land is, I go wherever my clients go. It's
awesome.
Every day's an adventure and something new and something different. And I love my GPS.
That's awesome. What got you into first what got you into real estate, and then what led you to decide to like focus in on land? Because that's not something that typically people kind of like. I got my real estate license. I'm going to be a land specialist, right?
So probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. I don't know exactly. I grew up in a real estate family.
Oh, okay.
Grew up in a real estate family, grew up in an agricultural family, citrus business, cattle. And then my ex-husband and I did real estate and development. So I had been in that for a long time.
Right.
So I was working a job, a 9-to-5 job. And I just knew like God had something different planned for me. So I had to get my community association management license for that job. And I went ahead and got my real estate license at the same time. So in a month, I took both classes and state tests.
Okay.
Thought I must have been crazy to think I was doing that, because at the time I was a single mom with 3 kids in 3 different schools. But I did, and did a couple of residential deals in the beginning, and I got the opportunity. I met this young couple and got the opportunity to buy some land, 10 acres. And then another young couple, and I got another opportunity to buy 10 acres. And I just thought, like, this is what I want to do. It's
That's
so
cool.
different.
Yeah.
You're out on the property. It's, there are deer and turkeys and cows and horses and everything.
It felt like home and something.
And I knew really residential was not going to be my thing from the beginning. So I also, like, I'd never lived in a subdivision. I'd never lived in a community. So I knew that was not, because I can't authentically tell you about, having a clubhouse or a community center or the pool. Like, authentically, I don't know. I've never lived that way. I never really lived in town where I had neighbors. I knew the cattle business. I knew horses. I knew hunting. I knew land. I knew agriculture.
I see.
So
it just made sense.
That's kind of where I went. And then it just snowballed from there. And I ended up with some phenomenal clients and some great opportunities. And it is constantly learning, but it just became really my passion.
Yeah.
And then the more I got into that, the more I realized that there were so many people who wanted that lifestyle, so many people, but they didn't know how to get it.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to be a homesteader. They didn't know about land. They didn't know about agriculture. They didn't know about USDA and FSA and NRCS and all the programs to help offset some of your expenses in living that way.
Interesting.
People did not understand the agricultural exemption with the counties. So I really got educated and started educating people.
Okay.
So I know our first meeting, you came out to a 60-acre piece I had.
Yeah.
And really, because that's my only opportunity to get in front of somebody to talk about agriculture and talk about the land. So it's like an Ag 101 class. And it's very foreign. It's a totally different beast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
A residential property.
Or, I mean, even it's very different even than commercial.
Oh, yes.
I mean, there's just like commercial has its own acronyms that you got to be paying attention to. Like, it was really surprising when that was probably like maybe 4 years ago.
It's been longer than that. I hate to date you, but I think so. Because after that, you sent me some clients and we bought some property out of Groveland for them. And I think they've been there 4 years.
Oh, okay.
So
there you go.
It's been a minute.
Well, what was interesting is when I did that, I realized at that time, because I was just taking on clients, and that was the first time I had a client want that kind of a property, and I was like, oh sure, I mean, how hard can land be? And then I go out and we meet with you, and you're talking through, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and So, after that experience, I was like, okay, anything in the future, I think if I get any land, I'm just going to give you a call. Cause it was just really much more than I expected. I didn't realize there's so many nuances to land that you have to kind of be familiar with what you can do, what you can't do. And, with any kind of whatever rules are in place. And like you said, there's a bunch of programs, and I just had no clue of any of that stuff. And it helped me to realize that, okay, I don't want to be like this person who has like this very limited knowledge. And then I'm trying to help someone else who also has limited knowledge. And that doesn't really help that person.
No.
So that's when I realized I don't know that I want to really get into land. I don't mind doing, let's say, like a development project, which is a little bit different. Because that kind of ties into commercial. But like, you really work mostly, is it now mostly like ranches and farms kind of deal?
So I do everything from, like, we did a small community, we won't call it a neighborhood, in South Claremont, that we were able to do, because the way the parcels were laid out, we were able to do like a very high end community. We put deed restrictions on the land, but there were not, it wasn't a neighborhood per se.
I see.
So, but because of the way the land was laid out originally, we were able to do that. Then a lot of farms, a lot of ranches, people who want a homestead, they want a house in 10 acres.
Yeah.
They want a house in 20 acres. a house in 5 acres. Typically, I stick to a house in 5 acres. Like that's really about the lowest I like to go.
Yeah.
And then I'm buying and selling all different types of things. So, part of that in buying larger tracts is conservation easements. And what if conservation easements have been put on a property, because that in itself is a whole other world and limitation and what you can do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just bought 300 acres for a client that I met. I was at an event, and I'm president for Sumter County Farm Bureau, and there were a bunch of Farm Bureau people there.
Okay.
So we are the voice of agriculture, and insurance is a member benefit, but Farm Bureau is a federation, and we're really the voice of agriculture. So some other people sent him to me, and he said, I hear you're the landlady. So I said, well, what are you looking for? And he said 250 to 350 acres. And I said, well, what's your dream? And he said 250 to 350 acres that I can buy an hour and a half from Tampa, that I can do an ag operation on. And I would love to already have an ag operation on it that somebody would stay on and run it until I can transition it to cows. But he wanted legacy land for his family. So we ended up buying 300 acres in Live Oak. It has a hay business on it currently. The operator's staying on it, and then he'll transition to cattle. We're putting a conservation easement on it that will come in next November. So, he was completely new to agriculture. He had the college degree, but he had not lived the life, but he had this dream.
Right.
So, so we found it. It was off market, found it, got a great deal on it. But we've walked through every process of that, like soil testing, a survey, what you can do with it, what you can't do with it. And because what I find one of the biggest misconceptions about land, and when we did this place south of Clermont, it was a total of 290 acres, and we had divided it up into like 10 to 40 acre lots. And people's perception is, oh, you have 10 acres, I can split that. You have 30 acres, I can split that.
Right. Not realizing that there are limitations to what can happen there.
Right. So, it's constantly educating. I think one of the most important things is I am a firm believer of finding a realtor that can service your needs.
Yeah.
So if I have clients who want residential or want a subdivision or want to live in that type of community, I refer that out.
Right.
Because I don't know. I don't know the schools. I don't know the developments. That's not my thing.
Sure.
So I'm going to refer that out because it services them best.
Of course. Yeah.
So I think, if you're looking for land, then you find a realtor who has the knowledge.
That makes sense.
The network, the knowledge, the connections for buying that land. Because one of the biggest things, and you will know this in the commercial side, is future land use.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest nightmares I can imagine is buying a client their dream property, and what looks like a cow pasture next door in 2 years is 500 homes.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know what was coming, and you didn't know what future land use was, and you didn't know where to find it. So like in Sumter County, we have the villages that are coming south.
Everywhere.
They're coming south. They're coming everywhere. And right now, there's a lot of land is pasture land.
Yeah.
There's cows on it, but there are new roads going in everywhere. So where do you find that? Do you have a realtor who's going to look to see where the roads are? Because do you want to be next to that 4-lane highway and the roundabout?
Right.
Or what's coming there?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of our responsibility in buying land is to know what's coming. On the selling side, it's our responsibility to know what's coming.
Sure.
And what's going to be coming next to that. So, what you're selling.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, I'm dealing with a development project right now where you know, they want to get an idea of value for the project, and there was an assumption of what was available in terms of sewer lines and water lines and all that good stuff, and we had to do some additional homework to kind of find out, like, hey, what you thought was happening, like, that's not happening at all, and that's going to completely change the value of the property. Like, this project may not be what you think it is.
Right.
And and for the seller, obviously we want to try to help them get as much as possible
Right.
for the project, but we also don't want to be unrealistic for them, because
No.
they have these ideas of what they think they can get for the project, but if it doesn't square, then you're going to end up, we certainly don't want to list it for a price that is not going to match up with what is actually going to happen in the community, because then no one's going to buy it, and then it doesn't get sold. And if they have this idea of what they want to do with the money, and everyone has a plan,
right,
and then that plan goes kaputs.
Yes.
When you don't have someone who knows what's happening and knows what's going on. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Now, you mentioned earlier something that I remember us having a conversation about, and this happens also with commercial, but I feel like it happens more with land, off market properties. It seems like there's a lot more. There's a lot more that is off market than people would presume.
Yes.
And now, why is that? Why do you feel that is?
Well, I think in the more rural communities,
Mm-hmm.
Where I tend to be, I think a lot of that, and then also in the commercial side, is if you have families, friends,
Mm-hmm.
people don't want, the sellers don't necessarily want people to know that they would be selling, because there's a lot of backlash.
Sure.
Right now in the agriculture world, we are losing our land.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere, because we are such a high growth state.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
In Sumter County, we are a high growth county.
Central Florida in general.
So we're just a different beast there, but we're losing our land. So there's, and especially like in my experience, when you have the villages coming south, then if you decide to sell something that's been in your family for generations, you're going to get a lot of backlash from the community.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you can, people are selling, and you can't blame them when they can sell here and go buy 10 times the property in Alabama, Georgia,
right?
Someplace else, and it's not the same as it was. I'm 7 generations from here. I mean, it's not the same as it was, and it's not going to be.
Right.
So there are a lot of off-market properties. There are also a lot of people who, the pricing, when you've been in real estate here for a while, or you've lived here for a while, the pricing is insane. In what you could have bought property for years ago to now. So I think part of that is people have a hard time believing they can really get this price for it.
Right.
And I think that's part of it, that they think, oh, and the other part of that is, where are they going to go? If you sell, where are you going to go? And in my world, I have a lot of people who are, they're in agriculture. So where are they going to put their cows? Where are they going to put their animals?
It's a big move.
Where are they going to put their crops? I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. So I think the off-market properties are there. One, it's asking. It's also asking if they would split off a portion.
Yeah, I can see that.
And they want to know who their neighbors are going to be.
Yeah.
What's coming in next to them.
Yeah.
So, and it's, it's building, as it's building your network.
Of course.
So when this guy said to me, this is what he wanted, I made some phone calls. I drove up to the Live Oak area, met a girlfriend who's a realtor, another one of her partners who's a realtor. I had 3 different clients looking for larger tracts. We spent the day walking, looking, driving at all of these parcels, and it was about, I called this buyer and said, I just found your dream property. It's 30 minutes further than you want, but it's perfect. And he said, there's no way. And I said, oh yes. So we went up the next week and off we went. Craziest deal I've ever done in my career. I think 4 months in the making, but we got it done and he was thrilled.
That's awesome.
So I think a lot of it is who you know and building your network.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that, and I think that a lot of agents in our profession forget like the partnerships that we make within our industry is so important. Like you mentioned, for example, that you went to meet up with another agent and then you guys collaboratively looked at a couple projects. And, this is the kind of business where those relationships are super, like that's a piece of leverage that I think a lot of agents miss out on because they're too focused on like whatever their compensation is going to be.
Yes.
And they're just trying to make the most money on every deal, as opposed to really trying to create those relationships that will allow them to make more money over time.
Absolutely.
Right? But they're just stuck on this is mine. Like it's sort of like this. What do you call that? It's like their mindset is not in the right place.
Right.
So it's really cool that you are sort of aware of that and you leverage the fact that you're like, hey, let me reach out to some partners out here to see if we can find this deal for my client and make this work for everybody, which is awesome.
Well, it is. And, part of, so I'm very intentional about what I do and where my time is. So being part of Farm Bureau, because it is we're the voice of agriculture. So it is, I got involved in that because I had some clients who had some Right to Farm Acts, which is part of the Farm Bill. And my local Farm Bureau stepped right in because we are very politically connected.
Yeah.
And then part of that for me, and the benefit of being part of Farm Bureau is there are a lot of agricultural people. So then that gives me connections all over the state. If I have clients who are looking for something, I can call other people that I've met, even if they're not in real estate, but they're local farmers and ranchers.
They know their neighbors, right?
That know their neighbors. I am also wise enough, as you get older, you get wiser, in that I refer business out if there are areas I don't know.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I can look on a map all day long, but it's not my...
Right, it's not the same.
So I have some realtors that I refer business out to because they know what's going on. They're similar. They do what I do. So I have a great realtor out in North Florida that I've referred some business to. I had some clients at a Winter Garden looking for hunting land. And we found some tracks up there. This realtor happened to have one of them listed. I called him. We talked it through and he's like, Joanna, you can't get out there. Like, unless you have a monster truck, you're not getting out there. And I said, can I just refer these people to you? So it just so happened he had an off-market property. Clients bought 40 acres, backed up to a 500-acre wildlife management area.
That's awesome.
They were thrilled. I was thrilled. I didn't have to drive 5 hours. Yeah. They were thrilled. He was thrilled. And so it is about building those relationships. And what's best for your customers.
Right. And I think that's even more important as we see sort of the shift that we're seeing in the economy and in the industry and stuff like that. I think those relationships are really, really powerful. So, one of the things that has always intrigued me, because, my wife, for example, one of the retirement plans that she would like to do is she would like to have like a farm and cows and all kinds of stuff. And, I don't know what I would do with myself because I don't know that I'm a cow person, but that's what she wants to do. So, happy wife, happy life.
Absolutely.
We'll figure that out.
Absolutely.
So, I know that, so there is this, I'm familiar with it, but I'm not an expert in this. This idea of like getting agricultural land, and then there's agricultural exemption. What is the difference between those two?
So you have ag zoning, and then you have, and this is a big confusing concept for people. You have land that's agriculturally zoned,
Okay.
and then you have your agricultural exemption that you get from the county. So, which is like a homestead exemption.
Okay.
It's a reduction in your taxes on that land.
Okay.
The definition, and this is a tricky thing for people, the definition of an agricultural exemption is the intent to be income producing.
Mm.
So, horses typically in a lot of counties will not, like if you have 2 horses, they're not going to qualify for agricultural exemption because that's not income producing.
I see.
So cows that you're going to breed, you're going to sell the calves, that's income producing.
I see.
Vegetables that you're going to plant, you're going to sell, income producing.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of different ways to get agricultural exemption. So typically on the county websites, there will be a tab that you can open for that because every county is different.
Sure.
Timber can be part of your ag exemption. There's a great venue that's down Bay Lake Road, and timber is what they use. They're in a timber program, and that's they don't have animals on the property, but that's their ag exemption. So it's a huge reduction in taxes. So I have a lot of cattle people who are looking to lease land. So I have the ability just in my network, because this is how I have built my business. And, I'm very out of the box. I'm not your normal realtor. So I buy cows for people. I buy horses for people. I have clients who've had ostriches and emus and a million different things.
Cool. Yeah.
So if you were to buy property and you don't know what to do, like let's say you bought 20 acres and you don't know what to do with it, and you're not quite ready to build on it, you don't own cows, so we can bring somebody in to lease your land to get your ag exemption on it.
I see.
When you have the ag exemption on a property, you get automatically covered by the farm bill.
I see.
So the farm bill is put in place for protection for farmers and ranchers.
Yeah.
There's the Right to Farm Act, which the purpose of that is to protect what you've been doing. So if you have I have a Lake County client who has a large pasture. It's got cows in it.
Yeah.
He also does hay on it. He was spreading chicken litter on it.
Now, what's chicken? What is that?
Like chicken manure.
Oh, okay. It's called chicken litter?
Yes.
That's so funny.
And it's quite odoriferous. Let's put it that way. So he's had this property for a long time.
Okay.
Development and housing has gone up on both sides. Those people were complaining to code enforcement because of the smell, but he's covered under the Right to Farm Act because it's pertinent to his ag operation.
I see.
So, and there are things that you can do when you have an ag exemption on a property that you can't do with a normal residential property that doesn't not have agricultural exemption.
I see.
So you have some exceptions, putting up pole barns, doing things that you don't have to put a permit for, putting sheds or storage containers, as long as it is pertinent to your agricultural operation.
I see.
So for you, like if your wife is wanting to buy a piece of property, then depending on the size of the acreage, you can't get ag exemption on every property. Like if you have an acre and you want chickens, that's typically not going to work.
Gotcha.
But let's say you bought 20 acres and you want to build, but it's going to be 2 years. So then I can come in, put a land lease on it, put cows on it, get your ag exemption. So in the meantime, you can build your pole barn. You can do your, if you've got fencing, whatever it is you're wanting to do out there, and that gets you the reduction in your taxes, but it also allows you to do things to prepare for how you're going to build your farm.
So just so I have clarity, so buying agricultural land doesn't automatically give you the exemption.
No,
but you have to have the agricultural land to get the exemption?
Yes.
To qualify.
Typically,
Okay.
yes. Now you can have some there's ag residential, like it depends more on the acreage and the use.
Okay.
So a lot of people think like I want to buy a house and an acre or a house and 2 acres and put an ag operation on it. So there are some counties that will allow for smaller parcels because if they're doing something vertical, hydroponics, something
I see.
bees, something that's vertical that they can do there. So the ag zoning, it's just easier to get the ag exemption, but on a residential property, you can still, if it's ag residential, you can still do that as well. It does not transfer. You have to have your ag operation in place by the end of the year, so December 31st. And then if you were to buy a property in 2024, you need your ag operation in place by December 31st. Then you file. There's an application process in every county. It's different. You would file between January 1st and March 1st.
I see.
The ag agent or someone from the county is going to come look at your property to make sure you have the proper ag operation on there and what you need. And a lot of times that's based, it sounds funny, but it'll be like 4-footed animals. You have to have this many. Or if you're doing, vegetables or a fernery or a greenhouse or whatever, there's criteria.
Right, a certain portion of the property has to have that or something like that.
Yes, and then they typically take like, if you have a house and an acre out.
I see.
On that.
Like if you're living on it.
Yes.
I see.
Yes. So then also in the Farm Bill is agritourism, which is a state statute. You don't get a permit for it. That's where your venues come into play.
Yeah.
Your U-Picks for sunflowers, blueberries, blackberries, all of that, strawberries, a lot of the event venues that people are doing now, the barn weddings that are such a trend, those run under agritourism. You have to have a bona fide agricultural operation on that property to do that. So that's a new, agritourism is a new term. It's probably about 6 years old.
Okay.
It's the state statute. So here, like in Lake County, you have a ton of the wedding venues. The barn weddings.
Yeah, for sure.
So, there's a lot of confusion on that. People think they're commercial, but they are not. They run under agritourism. Most of them run under agritourism.
Now, they have to be income producing as well?
They have to have their primary use of that property has to be agricultural.
Okay.
Yes.
So I can't just put some random vineyard and not sell any of it and have a venue.
Right.
Gotcha.
So the way that came about was the agritourism, which is the state statute under the Farm Bill. So you don't get a permit for it. It's very confusing. So I buy and sell those venues and build those.
Now, why is a permit not required for those?
Because it is a state statute under agritourism.
Oh, I see.
So the backbone of that, the purpose of that was to allow farmers and ranchers who were struggling to have a secondary income.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
That's how that started. So there is proper protocol to set that up. And so you can't just buy 10 acres or 20 acres and put up, some big, beautiful venue and call it agritourism. Would have to be commercial.
I see. So you would actually have to have an operation first, qualify for agriculture.
Yes.
And then you could do the agritourism as a part of your agricultural status.
Yes. So there's a Florida Agritourism Association, does a lot of educating on that. Carrie Baker, who's here in Lake County, has spoken at that. And he's got a lot of information on it. But typically, the primary use of the business of that venue 3 to 4 days a week needs to be agriculture. So there's a lot of leeway. We're finding that a lot of those are getting flagged right now because they haven't followed proper protocol.
Right.
In doing.
Right. They're looking for, a lot of times I think that what happens is that they're looking for a loophole.
Right.
And they don't really focus on the ag part. They're just trying to find a loophole to do a cool venue.
Yes.
I see.
Yes. So that's a big trend.
Sure.
So I have 2 going up now in Sumter County that we're doing and building and I stress to everyone proper protocol on doing those.
So now if they end up not following protocol and they end up losing, I'm assuming they could lose their ag status, which means that at tax time they're going to pay whatever the standard.
Not only that, but if you there's the probability that if you have not followed proper protocol and you are running a venue and you are booked out, then a couple of different things. One, you've got to try and figure out how to get it rezoned to commercial to be able to operate that. Then you have totally different criteria on your building and what has to be done, fire safety codes.
Sure.
You have to follow all of the
commercial standards. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. So that's a whole other animal.
So it's a whole other thing. So there are some that have, the actual building is not covered under agritourism, and they pull that footprint out, so that does not get the ag exemption on the rest of the property does.
I gotcha.
So you picks all of it, like Showcase of Citrus that's down at Southern Hills that's down. They're big agritourism. That was the idea behind the agritourism is how, what else can we do? Because our farmers and ranchers are struggling. And people who are new to agriculture, like they're trying to figure out what is the best way to monetize this. How can we do this? What else can we offer? And people flock to those things. So I have a client in south of Groveland that has the mini Highlanders, like Brandy has, those little fluffies. And she's doing tours. People are coming out to see her mini Highlanders. They're buying them. She's selling them. But she's educating on that. So there's all different kinds of things you can do that fall under agritourism. So I have some clients that they build the venues, and they asked me to sell them, and I said I've never sold a venue like this. So I happen to have a great attorney that I went to before and said, how do we do this? Like, what are we doing? How do we do this? And we talked that through and were able to sell them. And the new buyers were thrilled. Our agricultural stuff, it's just about educating people. And then I started doing some consulting on them because people didn't know how to get them up and running. And then I started building them. So it's a really, it's another part of what I do on that side. And I started doing some consulting because people like you, that your wife wants an agricultural property. How do you start? Who's going to do, are you going to cut hay on it? Who's going to do the fencing? Who's going to build your pole barn? Where do you get cows? How do you buy cows? How do you know what you're buying? So horses. I had some clients from Windermere that bought some property off Bay Lake Road. They'd never had horses before. So we bought them horses because I've got a guy for everything. But how do you get started in that when you're not from the area or you're new to it and you don't know? And educating, like this is what we're educating on, everything from your soil to building a proper barn to laying a property out. because the less time, money, and frustration you spend, the happier you are,
Sure.
and the happier you are to share with people about how you live an agricultural life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is like one of the more challenging like elements for someone who's not lived that lifestyle, transitioning into that lifestyle? What would you say is some of the more challenging elements that people maybe don't realize, going into a lifestyle that's like agricultural in nature?
I think one is connecting with people who will help you. I think one of the biggest things, like I'm a firm believer in soil testing. So when you buy a property, in my opinion, the first thing you need to do is soil test, because our ground is not what it used to be. And whatever it is you're going to do on that property, you need to have your soil conducive to that. So I work a lot with the IFAS office, which is University of Florida, their IFAS office. Every county has one.
What's IFAS mean?
It is the Institute for Food and Agricultural Services, I think is what that is for. But every county has one. So it's $10 to soil test. So you go out, pull up soil, send it to University of Florida.
Interesting.
So like if your wife wanted a garden, we're going to soil test this area for that. We're going to fill out this form. We're going to send it to University of Florida. We're going to say we want to grow tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, onions, whatever. They're going to send you back and say, this is what you need to add to make your soil the most conducive for that.
Interesting.
As a business person, it saves you time, money, and frustration.
Yeah.
Other than 2 years of wondering why nothing will grow. I think understanding the agricultural exemption and how you get that is a huge challenge. People understanding that, there's a process to that, like cows. Everybody wants cows. They're the easiest, aesthetically pleasing. People love them.
Yeah.
Where do you buy them from? Where do you get them from? You have kids, like you don't want them that are mean or aggressive.
Right.
I'm a big believer in buying what we call backyard cows. So I know all different producers. We're going to go get you family-friendly cows to put on there.
So some of them are more aggressive than others.
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting. That's so funny.
Absolutely.
It's not anything
and how many can you have?
Right.
If you have 10 acres, typically your 1 cow to 2 acres is the standard, but that depends on your grass. It depends on if you're going to feed. But what does that look like to you? And then connecting people for education purposes,
right?
And all of the services that are out there. So, the use, knowing where the land is, what you can do with it. If I have someone who comes out and they want us to have a specific use, they want to, grow certain vegetables or citrus trees, avocado trees, whatever. You have a cutoff line for where those things will grow and won't grow.
And so are you talking about like zone from like a growing zones kind of deal?
From growing zones.
I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not going to advise you to buy a property that the soil is not conducive for what it is.
I see.
That
it might be outside the zone.
Yes. Yeah. That your dream is. It's not realistic, and I'm not in it just for the money. For me, it's about watching my clients grow in this life. I take a lot of clients with me to different things to educate. I've taken Brandy with me to like short beef course. I have the other client that has the mini Highlanders. She's been to different classes with me. And the biggest reward for me is I met her about 4 or 5 years ago. Someone referred her to me on Facebook. When I first went to her property, she had a handful of rescue cows, an old horse, and she's now acquired another 20 acres through a USDA loan. Fantastic. She's got more than her one cow per 2 acres, but she has the minis, and she's fulfilling this dream, and it's great to hear her talk about all that she does.
Yeah.
It's like Brandy, now she's so educated
Yeah.
on all of that. But when they were first looking, like I went out and looked at her property to see, you know, what they needed to do for weed control, pasture management, what's deadly, like all the things. So, so I think your use is a huge challenge in understanding all of the different programs that are out there, because it is so confusing
for people. Yeah, so having someone with that knowledge makes a lot of sense. And there's not a lot of people. It seems like it's a relatively small community.
It is.
So you have to really make sure that you're talking to the right people. Because I mean, there's so many, and this happens in commercial world as well. But even with residential agents, I hear, you know, a lot of. It's so interesting how people want to appear to be knowledgeable, so then they talk about something they really don't know much about, and then they end up like sharing information that is either not helpful or just detrimental to the person that's asking them, as opposed to just like, hey, put your ego aside and just like, oh, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, let me get you in touch with someone who could actually help you out.
So quick story is I have so Meredith Nagel is my attorney that I use.
She's awesome.
Yes. For most everything. She called me one day so upset. She had a client. I didn't have any part of this transaction, but she called to see if I could help. Young girl, 29, had put her life savings into a piece of property in Sumter County. And she had her mom had a friend who was a realtor. They bought this property. It's 8 acres, 8.44. When she went to pull a permit to see about building in Sumter County, you are one home per 10 acres in most areas, unless you are grandfathered in. At one time, they were one home per 5 acres. That went back to one home per 10 acres.
Oh, wow.
So this young girl who has spent her life savings, she's a nurse, fantastic. Her dream was to be able to build. This property cannot be built on.
Oh, no.
So now she sits with this piece of property.
I can't do anything with it.
She can't do anything with it.
Oh, no.
So I got the phone call to see what I could do with it. And once we could put cows on it, then she could put a pole barn up, do some different things. But that is when it's, in my opinion, that's when it is a hard learning lesson on finding someone who is knowledgeable in buying what it is you're wanting to buy.
Yeah. And you know what? People who've gone through that, they understand that, because I get that all the time. Like I'll sit down with someone who's interested in wanting to purchase something. I just had a client actually call me the other day, and he was like, hey, I need some help finding a piece of a commercial property for this and the other. And then I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm happy to help. How'd you find me? I was like, oh, well, I looked online. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I was specifically looking for like a commercial agent because, I had a nightmare situation with a residential agent. And I know now that it's a completely different animal. And I need someone who specializes, because I don't want to go through that nightmare again, And, unfortunately, people take whatever comes to them.
Yes.
And I understand the inclination to do that, because you're like, hey, I need to make a living and I don't have a lot of business, so whatever comes to me, I'll just work it. But that could do such a disservice to the person, to the client at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
And
because who wants to be? I think when you're cutting your teeth on something new, I think it's wonderful that people want to learn about different things. I have a lot of people who say, oh, I want to do what you do. I want to buy land and sell land. I have said no. I refer a lot of business out, residential. because it is not my thing.
Yeah.
I'm very open about that. I'm very transparent about that. I don't mind saying it is not my thing, but let me get you to somebody
for sure.
who does. Development, I am well schooled on the development side. It is not my primary focus. It's not my passion. I would rather see our land stay agriculture in some capacity or have conservation easements put on it. But my brother that is his thing.
I gotcha.
So I have the knowledge about it, but it's not where I'm best suited. So I think as you become a more skilled agent and you're growing your business, you're intentional on where you want to be and saying no to things that aren't, but referring those clients out to people who do specialize in that makes you look great. Your clients are thrilled. You've made another agent connection.
Absolutely.
And when you surround yourself with the best of the best people for that.
For sure.
And it's a win all around.
It is a win all around.
It is a win.
I mean, even as the referring agent, we get to, we get a referral fee for having done that at the end anyway. So, and everyone wins, like you said. The client gets the best agent for them. The agent on the other side gets some business. We get a little bit of a little sliver of that, which is great. And like you said, it's a win-win all around. So, I want to be respectful of your time. So, if someone was interested in, had questions about buying land, a farm, a ranch, like, how do people find you?
So my business is mostly referral.
Yes.
I do, as you know, my business is mostly referral. So you can call me, text me, email me. I don't have an actual website.
Okay.
We're in the process of doing one because I'm doing a lot of consulting also.
Oh, okay. Now, I'm sorry, real quickly. What does that mean, consulting? Because a lot of people don't understand what that means.
Okay, so on the consulting side, so if somebody is not my client, but if someone, because if you're my client, I'm walking you through all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But someone who's new to agriculture and they don't know what to do with the land, they don't understand all of the process, then you can hire me to come in.
I see.
And basically set that up for you, whatever it is. And then I do a lot of consulting on the agritourism side for different people who want to start venues.
Okay.
So if someone wants to start a venue, you can hire me to walk you through that process so you know you're in proper protocol. Find out what it is you need to do. And I have different packages for that. Like it can be hourly or a full setup for that.
Okay.
Where people who somebody's bought 10 acres and they want some cows, they need to know how to lay the land out. They need all of that. You can hire, because what I found is, and I connect you with all of the different resources and programs. Because I found people didn't know where to go, so they were getting frustrated.
Yeah. And it's not easy to navigate.
And it sounds funny, but it is much more cost effective to hire me to do all of that for you than you to spend 3 or 4 years trying to figure out what it is you're doing and how to
totally makes sense.
How to do it. So basically you can give my information out however you want to, but that's it. But most of my business is referral business. That's from buyers, sellers, other connections.
Okay. What's the best phone number to reach at?
352-638-5554.
Awesome. And then what's your email?
Florida, it's FLANDGIRLS @gmail.com.
Perfect.
So Florida Land Girls.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Yes. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming out and providing some insight on what happens with land as it relates specifically to agricultural. It's really great. I really enjoyed initially meeting you, and when I was putting this whole podcast together, I was trying to think to myself, well, who could I bring that would really bring some good insight? And you're one of the names that popped up. So that's why I reached out to you. So I appreciate you coming out.
It.
I thank you so much.
I'm always happy to be able to talk about land and agriculture and all of the things. Yeah. I live, eat, and breathe it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome.
I
that's
love
awesome.
it.
All right, awesome. Well, hey, listen, if you guys like what you're hearing, make sure you comment below. Make sure you like, make sure you share. If you have any questions about what it means to, own a farm, agricultural, have an ag business, and, do agritourism, anything like that, Joanna's your girl. Go ahead and leave a comment down or call her at her number. Either way, let me know. I'll get you guys in contact. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any questions, let me know. Comment below, share, like, all that good stuff. My name is Gus. This is Joanna. I appreciate you guys. See you guys next time. Peace. All right.
Love it.
There we go.